Thank you for joining me today. I am joined by Captain Ron Anstey and firefighter paramedic George Calligandes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about crash scenes, particularly related to drinking and driving. And we know from studies that we've done that young, new drivers aren't particularly interested in statistics, crash scene images. But what we're hoping to do is touch parents who might be watching, 20-year-olds who might be watching, and younger children who might just be flipping by, and see if maybe they'll catch one item that might make an impression or a fact that they haven't heard before. So what I'd really like you to do is start off by telling us what happens when you get the initial call that there's a crash scene. Let's say you get a call that there's been a crash on Rockingham Road.
Okay.
Take it from there.
We'd get the initial call, and dispatcher would try to get the closest location as best we can. Sometimes it's difficult. People may not know the area. Sometimes in the excitement of the moment. But the best information we can get is the most exact location. The dispatcher will stay online and try to keep the caller online to find out the most pertinent information. Is anybody hurt? Can you see if anybody trapped, something like that. We have a standard dispatch that we use. Same amount of equipment would go to the car accident. At that point, when we get on scene, the incident commander would then determine, do I need more things? Do I need specialized equipment? If he does, he calls for it. Paramedics like George would go and they begin patient assessment, begin to treat the patient. So from a scene setup, whether it's alcohol related or not alcohol related at that point has no bearing. We treat the accident and the patient's the same to that point. Once the paramedic begins patient care, and I'll let George speak to that, that's when the alcohol may come in and have an effect on how they deal with the patient.
Do you generally know when you get to the patient if it's alcohol related?
Depends upon the severity of the scene, the patient's level of consciousness. Are they able to talk to us and communicate with us? How well they're able to communicate with us. Generally, as a rule, we will tend to ask them if they have had anything to drink or have they taken any medications or any drugs that might affect their driving.
Not that your care depends, you don't really care, either as far as your level of treatment goes. I mean, if they're drunk, you're not going to treat, your level of care is not going to be any different than a person.
Not necessarily. I think the only thing that we're really concerned with is their consciousness. For example, are we looking at someone who is impaired due to the impact of a collision, or are they impaired because of the alcohol? So it's kind of important for us to try to determine, at what level do they fall in. Okay.
Since this series is on drinking and driving, let's assume they are impaired. What do you do once you've determined they are, and why do you need to know that?
Well, if they are impaired, certainly we need to take under account protecting their airway. If somebody is intoxicated, there is always the unpleasant possibility that they could vomit. And if somebody is strapped into a backboard and they vomit, that could be certainly an issue for their airway and their breathing. Also, it's very important for us to determine that because the hospital is going to want to know if they've had any alcohol consumption before, because it's going to really show how they treat the patient as well, as far as, again, is it a head injury that we're looking at here? Is that why they're impaired? Or is it the alcohol that is the impairment?
Okay, what about information gathering if they're impaired?
That could also be very difficult as well. Obviously, memory becomes impaired, time of day, all kinds of things become very cloudy if somebody is impaired. So trying to gather any medical history could be very difficult.
When we determine that scene-wise, our focus is going to be the patient, getting the patient out and getting them treated. But one of the things we have to concern ourselves with, depending on the severity of the crash, depending on how many vehicles are involved, if somebody is impaired and that now becomes a police issue, we now have, it becomes almost like a crime scene. So we have to affect the way we attack things to try and maintain evidence for the police department as well. So we don't want us, we can sit there and we can cut a car into a million pieces, and that really tends to mess up their evidence as well. So if we need to, we need to keep that in consideration as well. Primary concern is going to be the patient, but secondly, we got to sit there and look at the entire picture now.
At this point, is the police department on scene, and are they working with you?
Generally, they'll be there. They'll, police department most generally at an accident scene will maintain the integrity of the scene, the safety of the scene, keep people away. We can do our thing and get the people out, make sure that there's gasoline and such. We'll protect it from any other hazards. And once we get the patient out, they own the scene. They do the investigation, crash investigation and such. And then we'd support them in that manner. But like us, their focus is going to be getting that person.
All right. You arrive at the scene of a crash, and the patient is impaired, and you need to find a medical history. What complications are involved?
It could be fairly complicated if they're impaired to try to gather a medical history. Again, they might be leaving very important information out, such as any allergies to any medications they might have. It's fairly routine for us if we have somebody with a severe injury, perhaps a fracture, to give pain control medication. And if they neglect to tell us that they're allergic to, let's say, morphine, that could be a problem for us.
What about other complications they might have? Say if they have diabetes, or, I mean, do you tend, if they are intoxicated, to do less than you would to a patient, like not give them morphine till you get them?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's going to really depend upon the extent of the injury and the level of their impairment. But we would treat all patients the same. We would try to gather as much of a medical history as we can.
Okay. What other problems do you run into with intoxicated?
Certain cases, it's cooperation. I mean, sometimes, you get somebody in an automobile accident and they're injured. They know you're there to help, and they know you're going to help them. And a lot of times they'll help you help them. They'll give you the information you need. They'll move and follow instruction. A lot of times we get there and they're impaired. They may be combative. They may not want to give you a hand helping them, and they just will not understand it. Listen, we're trying to help you. No, I got to do this. They have their mindset where they want to go, what they want to do. The last thing they want to do is see somebody with a uniform, because at that point they don't necessarily distinguish us from the police department, and they know there might be a problem with them. So getting instruction across to them for assistance, and sometimes they just can't understand it and won't follow instruction.
Do you find a certain time of year when there are more young people involved in crashes with impairment?
We have, and I wish I could give you real hard statistics on this, but we see summertime. It's nice out. You can do things outside more often. 4th of July, you usually see a lot of impairment. Prom season, graduation, you group, a few hundred people that are glad they don't have to go to school next year for the most part, and we can see some increase then. Again, I'd like to have some real firm statistics for you. I don't have those, but yeah, we do see more activity like that in the summer, towards spring and summer.
Any suggestions?
Part of the issue is, one thing when you're young, who you listen to sometimes becomes an issue. You find that you go to people for information and for advice that may not necessarily be the most credible people to go to. You know, we tend to go to people that are going to give us the answer we want to hear. And a lot of times, you know, you have peers and you'll sit there and say, you know, yeah, you're doing right, or this is okay, it's not a problem. When it in fact is. If you know, if you're having marital problems, you go to somebody for advice. If they say, well, I've been divorced 3 times, I know exactly what you're going through, and this is what it's probably not the most credible person to go to. If you wanted to have some medical advice, you don't want to come to me and ask me to show you how to do an IV. You want to go to the paramedic. He's the one you want pushing needles in your arms. You do not want me to do that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, by the same token, you probably wouldn't go to George to see, you know, is my heating system done right or is my sprinkler system done right? That falls into my area. So credibility of the people you're asking, and sometimes when we're young, we don't take that into consideration. But make sure the person you're asking the advice of knows what they're talking about, is not just speculating. You know, one beer, that'll impair you. It's proven.
And I don't think people understand that impaired driving creates the problems after the crash. It thinks about the issues that you were discussing.
Exactly. It goes well beyond the operator of the vehicle. And what young people need to understand is that it does happen in this town. It happens in every town across America. It doesn't matter if it's small, rural Londonderry as opposed to Boston or Manchester. It happens in this community. Teens fail to make good decisions, to listen to that little voice in the back of their head that says, maybe I shouldn't get behind the wheel because I've had something to drink. And it affects not just them, but it also affects primarily the passengers in their vehicle, who more often than not tend to be more seriously injured than the driver. It affects their parents. It affects their families, their friends. It puts us at risk as responders, because now we have to respond to a situation that's going to put us in danger. For example, if we're out on Interstate 93, traffic is still traveling at 75 miles per hour, and we're out there trying to do our job. Everybody's at risk.
That's true. And also, it's not only the young teens that are having the crashes.
It's not. The one accident that I can remember, I don't want to use the word haunting because it is not, but it's the one that I remember the most in about 30 years of being here. Involved teenagers, involved drunks. It was a triple fatality. And that's the one that I can see, and I can remember specifics of it. And that was, I'm guessing 25 years ago that it happened, but I can remember the specifics of the call. I can remember the people's names in the call and everything else, you know, but there's one. So sometimes the stuff just, this will carry on for years and years and years. You don't necessarily, you know, again, I don't want to use a haunting memory, but it's something that and does that affect me? Yes, it does. Why? Because it affected the way I dealt with my kids or deal with my kids relative to that. Because, okay, I've seen this, so I'm not going to let you do this. I'm going to hold the reins a little tighter because of what I've been able to witness. So it goes well beyond what that steering wheel and that one operator.
I see. It's tough. And like I said, talking with you, Captain Anstey, in the past, doing research for these programs and talking with other people, the kids that we have spoken to, the juniors and seniors in high school, don't care about this stuff. And from talking with them, they aren't going to be paying any attention to this show. But hopefully the younger kids might. Some of the graphics we're showing, some of the pictures we're showing, they might, the younger kids, the parents, the 20-year-olds might, and they might think about it. They might listen to some of the things that George said and not do it.
Exactly. It's always it can't happen to me.
Absolutely.
It won't happen to me. And that's usually the start of bad things when they believe that.
Tell us again the biggest problem you have with an impaired driver when you get to a scene.
Again, it's going to be their impairment, whether or not they're combative. It just leads to treating a patient more difficult if they're impaired. It's going to affect long-term their treatment.
Okay. Is there any information at the fire station that parents can get? Do you have anything, or is there a website, or can they come and?
I think the best it would probably be MAD and SAD are probably the two that you get the greatest amount. Police department would most probably have, from a statistical standpoint. You know, as we talk about patient care and stuff, and we're very restricted as to how specific we can get with information. That's regulated by federal law, so that's why we don't go into great detail. You know, I saw little Johnny, and he was
Right.
It creates an issue for us. Statistically, police department could potentially have something, or SAD and MAD are two organizations that would have a lot of information.
And we do have a chapter of SAD at the high school.
We do, and also in Derry, you have the CATS, the Community Alliance for Teen Safety, which is a very valuable resource.
And do we have any involvement with that in town?
George?
I do. I
You
actually
do?
work as a board member for CATS.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to talk to you about that later.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I hope that at least one person listens and takes note of what you had to say.
It'd be well worth it.
It would
Absolutely.
be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and please try and talk to your kids. We appreciate you watching, and I appreciate you being with me. Goodbye.